Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today you're here with me, Corey Needs. We are doing a general aviation training seminar about safety and safety techniques. For those who don't know me, I'm Corey Needs. I'm a flight instructor here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've been flying for about 10 years now, have 5,000 hours experience in general aviation and small prop aircraft. So today we're going to show you a couple of those aircrafts. We're also going to go over several different pitfalls that other pilots might have fallen into and other situations that have caused either bad days or terrible days for some pilots. Some catastrophic events that could possibly be prevented and hopefully will be prevented with some of these techniques that we're going to show you today. A couple of things that we're going to need is your simple airplane checklist, and I will show this later on. Give you some tips about how to fill it out and a layout that's helpful and allows you to quickly brief over the information that is required to know in your aircraft, as well as a fuel sump. This is a tool that you'll get at any aviation shop. It's used for the fuels, and we'll go over that for the fuel tanks. We'll go over that later as well. But today these techniques are mainly here to help you avoid any errors and catastrophic errors that could occur while flying an aircraft. And we will begin. All right, let's begin with a tour of some of the airplanes really quick. Right here we have an RV6. It's a home kit airplane. In this corner over here we got a 1955 Bonanza, Beechcraft Bonanza. It's recently been painted. It's a beautiful looking airplane. I think it has a lot of style. Here we have a 1953 Bonanza that is currently in the process of being painted. It'll be a good tool to show you some of the things that you want to avoid while flying in other airs. And today this is the airplane that we're going to be working on that I'll show you the safety techniques with. And it is a Piper P828R 1971. Okay, so these are some fairly old airplanes. We're going to go over techniques on how to keep them flying and keep yourself, more importantly, keep yourself safe while in flight. As you saw in the video, in the intro, I'm 6'7", so some of these places are hard to get to, and these are small airplanes for a big guy, but nonetheless, safety is important. So first, we're going to start with the pre-flight, okay? Now, pre-flight is the most important part in a airplane safety, and it's the part that gets missed the most, in my opinion. Pre-flight is a walkthrough around the airplane that checks for certain safety hazards, and it's sometimes thought as annoying, and I think that's why a lot of pilots skip it, but truly is one of the most important parts of flying. And more importantly, one of the issues that people come up with is they think that it's the responsibility of the senior pilot to, check for safety and know the airplane. But that is a common misconception that we're going to go over today. If you are flying in the aircraft as a passenger, as a pilot, as an instructor, as a student, it is your responsibility to check for safety and to know what requirements are there for takeoff. So we'll start with the pre-flight, and it's a simple walk around. I like to start here at the entrance where you go in and you just walk around and you look for damage along the trailing edge of the wing. This is a common spot that sometimes get hit. This is a flap, and the flap is stationary, of course. Now the ailerons, this is something that most pilots do not do, but it is definitely a requirement, and a good safety technique is always check that the flaps and the ailerons are free and loose, and that means that you push them up. Okay, so you can see you push them up and you push them all the way back down, and you make sure that inside the yoke is spinning as well. So we'll show you that. See the yoke spin there. It's dark in there, but they're spinning, and you do this to make sure that there's no rocks that have been lodged in these cracks, that there hasn't been a breakage in the lines inside of the aircraft as well, so that you have good controls while in flight. And then you continue to walk around. You look at the leading edge of the airplane And I'll show you on this plane over here, but sometimes when you're walking through hangars or somebody's walking by in your hangar, they could accidentally hit the leading edge and cause some airflow disruption. That is evident here on this airplane. After we've taken away the paint here, we've seen that this is actually just car bondo that people have touched up on the aluminum wing leading edge of this aircraft. That is unsafe. That is not something that you would want to fly with. So as a safety precaution, we ask that you always check the leading edge of the airplane, look for any incidents, and report them if there are incidents. Okay, we're going to continue to walk around. These are the cowling flaps. Now every plane's going to have them. You're going to make sure that the cowling right here is firmly latched and in position on all 4 latches. Some airplanes will have more. Check that it's latched, and it is. Now we're going to go over to the other side and check these latches. Okay, good and good. So always check the latches. Now we're on to the propeller and spinner. Now this is also a common step that is overlooked by many pilots, but you're just going to want to check these screws on the spinner. You do not want to lose your form of thrust while in the air. That is a very, very bad thing. So you just check these spinners, check the screws on them, just make sure that they're not loose, and then finally you're going to go and reach your hand right past the propeller, and there is a belt. It's right there, and you're going to push on that belt, give it a little tug, just make sure that it's not overly loose. That is your alternator belt. Okay, covered up the camera there for a bit. And now we are moving on to the left side of the airplane, your right as you're looking at it, and you're going to see these big red flags. There's one there over the pitot tube and one over the static tube. Now as a pilot, you're going to know what these do. They give the airplane information such as flight speed, altimeter, your altitude, attitude indicators, and they're very important. However, we put these flags on them because there are holes that use the air inflow of the airspeed over the wings to calculate airspeed and that data that I previously mentioned. Now these holes can get stuck and clobbered in with mud daubers. A spider could go in there and make a home, and once the wind starts flowing in there, that can affect the wind flow. So you always remove these flags before flight, and when you are done putting it up, you put the flags back on to cover those holes up so that bugs do not enter and create homes in there, because that is a common error that a lot of pilots miss. They get ready to take off and they're getting false airspeed indicators as they're pulling up or turning, and it causes them to stall and crash the airplane. So now we've got that covered. We're going to move back along to the leading edge. We're looking for any dents. If there's big bugs, you want to get those off as well. That'll reduce the laminar flow over the wing and make you lose lift. So we're going back around. We're back at this aileron. We're going to look for any rocks in the flight controls. Lift up. See if you can see the yoke moving there. Push down. Okay, good. Flaps are locked here, so you'll see that those can't move. You go back and you're looking for any major dents or anything again. Now this is the stabilizer. We're going to do the same thing along the leading edge. We're going to look for dents. A lot of times somebody will leave a toolbox here, and as you're moving it, you might hit the toolbox. You can see there's actually a dent right there, but we got that covered up. Right there, there's a little bit of a dent. And that's okay. You're just looking for any big holes or gashes that may have been formed. And then you're going to go back over here, and you're also going to lift. You should see in the cockpit the yoke move. You just want to make sure that this is free and loose as well. Light touch. And we'll look at the rudder here. You want to look for any dents along this as well. Now we've gotten the major part of the pre-flight done. Now we're going to go and we're going to use the fuel sump. This is critical. I cannot emphasize how critical this is. A lot of times when pilots get get going. It's crazy to think about, but one of the biggest errors is that the pilot does not know or understand how much fuel is on board. So right here we've got a fuel tank, one on each side, big sticker that labels it. We're going to open this up and visually check how much fuel is in each tank. Okay, so it's hard to see without the light in there, but you look in there and you can see just about how much fuel is in that tank. You can tell right there that we got about 7 gallons in that tank, so we would need to fill up if this tank on the left wing is not full. Now you want to always visually check, because a lot of times pilots will go up and do a 30-minute flight and they switch tanks, and as they switch tanks the aircraft will turn off, and as you can imagine, the engine turning off in flight is not a pretty situation, not one that you want to have. So you visually check each tank as well as sump them. Now sumping is, on every fuel tank you have a sump line. Now it's hard for a big 6'7" guy to get down here. Get on your legs, sit Indian style, get on your knees, whatever you need to do, but this is the fuel sump, okay? And in every flight bag there will be a sumping tool, and this is, you will stick the pin into the opening and push to get a little bit of fuel, and you want to look for debris or water, and the water is thicker, denser than aviation gas, so it will sink to the bottom, and the sump is directly at the bottom at the lowest point of the fuel tank, so you'll see water in there. And that is a safety check that you do before every single flight. Always check that water has not leaked or that debris is not clogging the fuel line before you fly. And finally, we're on to the last couple of bits of a pre-flight, and that is the wheels. Normally you do this while you sump the tanks, because you sump both tanks, but you get down there and that little cylinder, silver cylinder for the hydraulic brake and the landing gear, it's a little dirty, but it's fairly clean right now. And you want to just make sure that there's not any heavy caked dirt or rocks or anything in there that might cause the gear to not come down as you are going into land. That one is pretty clean. That's cleaner than the other side. That is an experience that I have personally dealt with, is having the gear not come down and having to land on the belly, and it is not pretty. The best you can hope for is that everybody gets out alive and the plane is not damaged too bad. These flight safety techniques, although they might seem small, are techniques that in many cases will save your life. Let me get this so I can. These techniques in many situations will actually save your life. They're important to always do, always remember. Never have a flight where you skip any of these techniques, because it might just be the one thing that goes bad, and we like to say have a bad day, but in all reality it might end your life. Airplane flying is generally safe, but there are issues with obviously crashing, and if you do crash, it's not pretty. And like I said, the biggest thing that I can emphasize here is that you always do this every flight. Do not let your superior do it and just go by his word that it was done. Do it yourself every flight, even if you're a passenger. It's important to know that in general aviation, you don't have the same FAA and DFW airport personnel going over every airplane and doing it for you. It's basically just you, so always do it yourself. finally here we have a checklist, and this is required in every flight. This is my personal creation. It has some of the basics of the flight, so how to start your engine, before takeoff checklists, and they're all things to remind you to have a safe flight. If you do them, you won't run into any issues. You'll be able to switch your fuel tanks on time. And then here on the inside, this is important to know on every single aircraft. There's speeds, there's timings, there's altitudes that are specific to each aircraft that are important to know, and I like to put it on the inside of each checklist for each plane that I fly. As I get ready to fly the airplane, I'll look over this card and I'll remember my stall speed, my takeoff speed, my best rate of climb speed. These speeds will not only help you get there faster, which is always important, but they'll make sure that you don't have any accidents, any stalls on short finals or anything like that. I hope that today has helped you. It's helped you learn the importance of becoming thorough in your flight, pre-flight check, and that no accidents come about. Good flying. Thank you.